you're anything like me and like to repurpose things, especially old tools, you're going to want to watch this video. This used to be a radial arm saw. It's now not, and I don't know what to call it. I called it the radial arm router, but that's kind of boring. There's got to be a better name, and I know that you guys can come up with a creative name for this. So help me name my tool, please, in the comments. And I'll put the name right across here on both sides. So you could become famous. I was thinking thingamajig, because it's a thing and it's a jig, but I think we can do better than that. I'll be honest, I'm shocked that I haven't seen anything like this on the internet or YouTube or anywhere yet. And considering the low cost of radial arm saws right now, they're a dime a dozen. If you check on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or Kijiji, $50 and up will get you a decent radial arm saw. And the radial arm saw has a lot of built-in components that would work in other applications. And this is an example of just one of them. It's a cross between a router flattening jig. It's a mortise and tenoning tool. So there's a lot of versatility in this setup. And I'm going to show you exactly what it can do right now. So the only remaining components that are visible from this originally is just this section right here. I don't know what you call it, the headstock, gantry, but the top section of the radial arm saw. Originally, I had the router swapped out for the saw on the radial arm saw, which worked really good. And here's an example of that one right here. We'll call this version 1. Worked really good, but I wanted more surface area to work with. So I came up with this design, which gives me a full 48-inch bench table. I could put a full sheet of plywood in here and make dados in it if I wanted to, or I could flatten a 48-inch log. Similar to this right here is an example of me doing that. So what I've done is I've surrounded the original gantry, I'm calling it, with plywood to extend it, 3/4 inch plywood. So I've extended the length of the gantry. I've got 2 linear rails on top that provide the motion, and I just built the housing, which is this part, out of plywood. I covered it with aluminum plate just to give it a bit of a cooler look. I think it looks pretty sharp. So in this format, it's just a typical router sled that can also be used for dados. As an example, I've got this piece of walnut clamped down. I can also clamp pieces down anywhere along here. I've got a fence right here that is 90 degrees to the gantry. So I can either clamp pieces down. If I wanted to run a dado across here, I could clamp the piece down and run the dado across there. Or if I wanted to, I could take these off. I can actually lock this in place. I've got set screws on either side. So if I tighten those, now the headstock is locked in place and it's clamped against the plywood here. At the end of this video, I'm going to go into detail on the build components. So I'll get some nice close-up shots of everything and explain how I use the brake system. So I'll go into that in more detail in the end. This first part, I'm just going to show you the functionality of what you can do with it. So I've got a locking mechanism on both sides. If I just had locking on one side and tightened it, it's going to skew this whole gantry a little bit. And I wanted to keep things perfectly 90 degrees all the time. So I've got set screws on both sides. So it gives pressure on both sides. So it's not forcing one side over versus the other. So with it tightened in place here, I can then, with my fence, I could run the material lengthways. Again, if I wanted to make a dado, real simple, easy way to do that. And this is the boring side. Once we get to that side, that's where all the excitement happens. So hang tight, don't leave yet. Now, the way to raise and lower this, originally this saw had a hand crank to raise and lower, which is on this end here. So what I did is I've got an old cordless drill at the auction. I paid $10 for it. but it still works extremely well. And I basically have it clamped in there with a socket on the end of it as a drive that turns the crank to raise and lower it. So I can raise and lower it to whatever height I need to, and it actually goes up quite high. So I can fit full logs in here, just like the sample I showed you before. I also have these miter gauge on this side. Got 2 miter slots, and this is actually an old table saw top. I say old table saw. It was a brand new table saw that I bought at the auction for $50. It was a King Canada table saw that had all of the components except for the motor. So I just wanted it for the top, and for $50, you can't go wrong. So it gives me a nice solid surface on this end where I've got miter gauges. I've even got an insert. If I wanted to put a palm router underneath, I could mount the router to this, and I could route from both sides and be twice as efficient. Never done that, but theoretically I could do it. So that covers this side of things. The exciting stuff, I'm going to change the camera angle so you can see that side better. So I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. So now that I've got it switched around to this side, you can also see that I have a ruler up here. So if I needed to move the headstock a specific distance, I can just align it right up here and see how far I'm moving it over. Same thing with the height. On this side, I've got a ruler in place so I can gauge how much I'm raising and lowering it. And to access everything on this side, I've got these 2 guide rails right here. And the reason that they're there is when this is up and in place like it is now, I know that this gantry is 90 degrees to my fence. So I don't have to measure or align anything. As long as this is flipped up, I know I'm 90 degrees to there. So when I flip this down, then I can rotate this around just like this. So now it gives me a completely different tool. And I've got a set screw here that lines up with a slot on the shaft here. So when that's tightened in, I know I'm 90 degrees to this surface as well. So again, there's no guessing. As long as I've got this tightened in, I know I'm 90 degrees. So on this side, I've got a sliding table with stops that I can flip up if I don't want to use them. So I've got a pretty good range of motion for the slide table going this way. And then I've got my axis going this way. So I've got 2 axes at 90 degrees to each other. And I'm not going to tell you all the things you can do with this because you guys know well enough just from visually seeing the application here, the types of things that you can do. So I'll leave your imagination up to the application of how you would use this tool. But again, there's many different things that it works really good for. And I built this probably about 2 years ago, and I'm still finding new things that this tool works really well for. So as an example, if I wanted to, let's say that this was a solid piece of stock, and I wanted to route out a square bowl. I would typically, I'll just double tape it down to the surface once I've got it lined up 90 degrees. So then I can use my stops. They're adjustable, obviously. So I can, actually, let me lower this down a little bit so it makes more sense. I haven't got this tightened right in. This is just an example, so I don't need to have it perfectly tightened, but trust me. So let's say I wanted to route out this as a square bowl. So I would set my stops to where they needed to be set. So this stop is stopping it right there. Then on this side, I would adjust this stop over here. So now I've got my stop set up. So it's going to stop when it gets to this edge. Then on this side, it's going to stop when it gets to this edge. For my headstock, in order to put stops for it, I just use a clamp, which is pretty straightforward and simple. So now I've got a stop set up. So it's going to stop there, it's going to stop there. So I can basically route out this entire bowl. So I also have a height adjustment for this whole table. So I can raise and lower it with this knob. So the way that I route out this bowl, I'll start up the router and I'll slowly raise it up till it's at the depth that I want to cut. Cut the grass is what I call it. And then just raise it up a little bit and just keep doing that until you've got the depth that you want. So that's one of the things that can be done with this. And again, don't forget that we can lock this in place too. And I could run dados this way as well. So very versatile. But wait, there's more. Soon I'm going to tell you about the steak knives that you get when you order this. So I can lock this in place as well with this knob. So now it's locked in place. I've got these set up on struts. It's like an industrial T-track. Electricians use these struts to hang wires, but I've implemented it into, like I say, an industrial T-track. So I can just slide this in. I've got 2 bolts on this side to tighten this in place. I've also got set screws on each side down here. So for me to get it level this way, I've got that set screw that I can put in or put out depending on if I want it to go up or down. So I can re-level it every time I put this on and off. Once we take this off, and then I can slide this piece in. So I just make sure that this is 90 degrees to this surface up here. Tighten these screws. And the advantage with these struts is you can tighten the hell out of them and they don't move. You don't have to worry about bending or damaging them. They're very industrial. So now what I can do, let me lower this. I could do mortise and tenons, or I could lock this headstock in place and just do dados in the middle, or I could lock this in place here and just do a dado this way. So again, a lot of versatility, a lot of different things that you can do with this setup, and it's relatively straightforward to operate. It's pretty foolproof. Now, this whole thing cost me, with the linear rails and everything, I'm going to say less than $200 to build. So it's not expensive. It's really not that difficult to build. And right now I will go into the build details and show you how it's all put together. So the main structure is this tubing that runs the full height, the width, and this little top plate up here. So I've got, what the hell? Okay, we had a little bit of a technical issue there. My camera fell off the tripod. I'm anxious to see what that looked like from your side. Didn't break anything, so that's the important part. So the way I've got everything designed, I've got this tubing that fits fairly snug inside this outer tubing here on each side. So that keeps everything aligned and gives me basically the tracks to run vertical. I can adjust the angle of it this way by adjusting these screws, however far out it goes. So I can adjust the level this way as well. So as an example for this, if it wasn't level, I can level it from down here with these 2 bolts on each side. This cross section here is just running on a single linear rail, like that. Then down at the bottom, I've got the weight of it, which is the weight is pushing that way. So I've got this bearing, or 2 bearings right there, that are supporting the weight and keeps everything rolling really nice and smooth. So to raise and lower it, I've got this set screw here with a knob on top. I've got a nut embedded in that piece of wood there. So as I turn it, it's raising and lowering this piece of wood, which this whole thing is attached to. I've got a steel plate right there to keep everything square. And I've got this vertical linear rail right here to keep everything perfectly perpendicular. at 90 degrees, up and down, and to just help it run smoother. It's just the screw just sitting in there just spins. You can see the bottom of the linear rail for the up and down component. Don't look at my welds, please, but these were just gate hinges that I just welded on an extension to it. But again, please don't look at my welds and judge. I'm not a metal worker. And you can see here, this is these struts that I'm talking about. You can buy them at Home Depot or pretty much any hardware store. So the top, I've got 2 linear rails that run the full length. You see I've got this angle brackets here, which support the ruler on this side. And as I said, this is just plywood that I've got encased in this aluminum sheeting. And I've got 4 of the slide rails. 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, it moves really nice, really smooth. Then over on this side, so there's my drill. I don't have it bolted down or anything. It's just literally sitting in between these 2 pieces of plywood there. And I've just got my nut on there. And over here, I've just got some studs in here to flip this end up. And this is a port for dust collection. I can run my dust collector in there. So the way I've got these brakes set up, this bolt has got a nut embedded in the plywood there. Then on the other side of it, I've got a piece of rubber, just like that, 1/4-inch rubber, and I've got a steel plate. Pretend this is a steel plate. So on the other side of this bolt, the bolt is pushing on the steel plate, which is then the rubber is pushing on the plywood, the sides here. And that works really good for brakes for this thing. It really holds solid. So if you're ever looking for a solution for brakes, this is a good one. And the same setup on this linear rail down here. Same setup, just runs through steel plate, piece of rubber. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I really would appreciate if you would. I've got a bunch of exciting projects coming up. Also have a bunch of repurposing videos, and I've also got some home renovation type videos too. So if you've got any interest in woodworking in general, my targeted audience is mostly beginner level woodworkers, but if you're intermediate to expert, I'm sure you can gain some knowledge as well in regards to tips and tricks. My format is I basically just come in my shop and do what I normally do. The only difference is I'm now talking to a camera while I do it. And as I'm building things, I pretend that I'm teaching someone that has very little experience. So my videos tend to be a little bit longer because they go into great detail in regards to instructions on how to use tools. I do a lot of jig building, how to make jigs, how to use jigs, and also just the construction process from start to finish on something like an urn, as an example. The projects that I do are all achievable for beginner level with the instructions that I give. You don't need any special tools. Pretty much everything I make, you just need a table saw to do it. Thickness planer would be advantageous. And even a bandsaw isn't really critical for the projects that I do. Most of it is work on the table saw and router, similar to this, but you don't need this setup. You just need a router. This setup just makes everything easier and faster and more accurate. But if you want to build one of these, I'd be happy to help you out. If you have any questions in areas that I didn't cover on this, if you want any dimensions or measurements, just leave a comment. And I do read every single comment and reply as quick as I possibly can, usually the same day. I will also leave my email address at the end of this video. If you want to reach out to me by email, I have no problems with that whatsoever. So I truly do enjoy helping people. So leave an email if you have any questions or comments.